Good afternoon, everyone, from rainy Halifax. My name is Rebecca Labby, and I'm your host for your live tutorial today on automating the INCOSE guide for requirements. Here we go. So let's just dive right in here. The INCOSE guide for requirements, I'm sure all of you are quite aware of what this is, but it's the most widely used and highly respected reference in the requirements engineering world. There's 41 rules in the latest revision, which is quite an extensive list. Luckily, there are tools now that you can use to automate this guide. There's requirements analyst tools like QB-Scribe that are natural language processors. So why do we write requirements in natural language? The informality of natural language makes it easy to specify high-level general requirements that the details are not yet known. It's very easy for requirements engineers to just jot down the things that they have in mind, and everyone can understand it and read it. But the use of this natural language in requirements has three common and severe problems: ambiguity, inaccuracy, and inconsistency. This is because that you can have an idea in your mind, and when you jot it down, it might be clear to you, but it might not be clear to everybody else. So you need something to remind you to use certain terms, as well as make these requirements as clear as possible. So there's some previous solutions for using natural language. One is abstract notations. These can't be used. There are some problems with abstract notations, though, because they can't be used throughout the entire systems engineering process. Project stakeholders also usually come from a wide variety of backgrounds and aren't familiar with abstract notations, and they don't have the time to become well-versed in these notations, so it's just a lot easier to use a form of natural language which everybody can understand. Everybody involved in the project can give it a read and be able to see what's going on. For this reason, 95% of engineering specifications use some form of natural language. The second solution for not using natural language is guides, rule sets, and checklists. Internally or externally developed. Externally developed would be something like the INCOSE guide, which I mentioned before has 41 rules. These 41 rules take 2 pages just to list out and over 30 pages of text just to explain them. Manually reviewing against all these rules is a tedious and time-consuming task that takes requirements engineers lots of time. So anything that can help them reduce that time and use their skills towards more technical tasks is a welcome addition to their process. So automating the INCOSE guide for requirements, humanity versus machinery, finding the balance. There always has to be a balance between using a tool as well as the requirement engineer's knowledge. INCOSE states a time-saving tool should not take more time to maintain than it saves, meaning the time that it saves you on your requirement reviewing and revision, you should not have to take that time into setting up the tool, maintaining that tool, and adjusting it to your needs. So this is our way of finding that balance. The professional still has strengths. They have to understand the project, they have to author the framework, and solve the problems that QB-Scribe will find for them. QB-Scribe's strengths are the application of the principles. So 28 out of the 41 rules of the INCOSE guide are automated. They also clarify the content, so it warns you of any vague, ambiguous terms or vague language so that you can fix that and make a more clear and concise document. It also identifies problems, maybe reductant or contradictory terms or requirements so that you can fix those and again make a more clear, concise document. So we're going to get started here on how we automate the INCOSE guide, and I'm just going to be flipping back and forth between the rules in the slides as well as the tool itself and show you exactly how we automate it. So I'm going to start with the tool here. So as you can see, I'm just going to turn off my video here. There. So as you can see, QV Scribe runs within Microsoft Word. It's also available in Excel. And you can see here the document is on the left and the requirements are on the right. So this is a pre-marked public document, but it's very easy just to go through and double click on your requirements and they will pop up over here. After you double clicked on a few requirements, you can press the Use Requirement Finder. It'll find your requirements for you and you click Analyze, and within a few seconds it will analyze your document for you. So you can see here there's 3 sections: quality, consistency, and similarity, and they will show up over here once they are analyzed. So here's your overall analysis. There's your overall quality score for your entire document, indicating how much risk is in your document. And then there's all your requirements below it with their own quality scores. We're going to go into these more in depth once we go through some of the rules. So our first rule here is Rule 41, use a project-wide style guide. The bulk of this work is still up to the professional to create this style guide, but QV Scribe can help enforce this style guide. It's still up to you to decide which words that you want to use, which imperatives you want to use, what template, how you're going to identify the requirements within your document. But the configuration setting within QV Scribe can help alert you of anything that's outside of your style guide. So up here is your configurations tool. As you can see, there's a save button. So if you have different projects going at the same time, you can save different configurations for different projects, and they'll be found here within the drop-down tab. When you click on the configurations tool, everything here is what you can personalize to your project. So here are the trigger words, your imperatives, negative imperatives. We'll go through these a little more in depth later on the presentation, as well as there's some consistency and exclusion prefixes. So it's completely and totally adjustable to your organization and your project. So the first analysis we're going to look at is the optional words analysis. This addresses Rule 9, avoid escape clauses. These are things like so far as possible, as little as possible, where possible, and as required. These escape clauses can leave requirements open to interpretation and lead to ambiguous and unverifiable documents. This is because the person reading the document may not know the situation. They may not know where things are required or what your definition is of as little as possible is. There's a variety of definitions to that, so we should be as specific as possible. So within the QV Scribe tool, you can sort your requirements within a variety of different ways. The first is by the way they show in the document, which is how it is now. You can also do it by score. But for the purpose of this presentation, we're going to do it by the order in the document, as well as over here you can sort by issue. So since we're looking at optional words, we're going to dive right into optional words and then click on a requirement. So here you see it brings it directly to the requirement you want to look at, and it highlights any issues within it. So this one only has an optional word error. So here the words highlighted are can and when required. This shows you exactly where your wording needs to be summed up and made a little more specific. And you can easily edit this right within the document and reanalyze it. But for the purpose of this presentation, we're just going to continue on. If you'd like to see any of these tools or analyses or any processes I'm going through at any time in more detail, feel free to just send me an email and we can go through something in further specifics, as well as tailor it to your document if you would like. So the next analysis is Continuances Analysis. There's two rules that this addresses. Rule 16, use a defined convention to express logical expressions, as well as avoid combinators. Any continuances could indicate that there is a rationale statement or more than one requirement within your requirement statement. So by checking for these, you can easily run through your document, see if there's any of them available, and if you need to fix something, you can fix it. But because continuances can be used properly within requirements, you can exclude them from your analysis once you've done a quick overview and ensure that they're used correctly, so that they're not clogging up your analysis or showing you false positives. That way you know that your analysis is true. So when we go into the document here, in your configurations, this is where you can exclude from your analysis, is this little checkbox here. And we'll just go through a little example here. I clicked on continuances, and here is a good example of the color-coded highlighting of the issues that QB Scribe picks up. If you click on uses continuances excessively, it just highlights the continuances. So in this case, there's multiple continuances, there's a couple sentences, and if you give it a quick read through, it shows that there are actually two requirements within this statement, so it should be split up into two separate requirements to increase clarity of your document. So next is the universal quantifier analysis. It covers two rules again: avoid using absolutes and avoid universal quantifiers. These are words like all, any, both, always, things like that. Their presence allows for interpretation and can make it difficult or impossible to test. Things like any process. Well, we don't know what processes exist within your organization, so any process could mean anything to us. So you should really narrow it down and make it more specific. This analysis is only a quality warning and does not affect the overall quality score. So it's just a warning saying, hey, something's going on here, you should give it a look. So again, go into issues, universal quantifiers, and we'll click on this first one here. So you'll see here it just has this little caution box beside it. That means that it won't affect your quality score. It's just a warning. And here there's any. If you give the sentence a read, the municipality reserves the right to validate references at any time through the procurement process. So they actually mean any there, which means it's used properly. This is why it's only a quality warning and it doesn't affect your quality score. Let's go through another one here. You can see this one is rated a 5 out of 5 with a quality warning. 5 out of 5s don't mean that you're completely free. You don't need to give them a look. You should still give them a brief look through because we don't have the knowledge that you do. You have the technical knowledge, so you should still be giving these these requirements a brief read. But here, the pay station shall have coin escrow to allow a user to cancel the transaction at any time and have their funds returned. Well, do they really mean any? Any could mean they could come back in 3 days after they've parked there and decide they wanted their money back. That shouldn't probably happen. So they need to narrow down this requirement. This is definitely proof of the 5 out of 5 still needs a brief read through, even though we gave it a very good quality score. So next is our vague words analysis. There are 6 rules that this covers, and I'm just going to go through all the rules here and then we'll dive into the document again. So the first rule, avoid the use of vague terms. You guys know this: adequate, better, correctly, things like that. The next rule is avoid open-ended clauses, including but not limited to, and so on. Somebody might not be aware of the and so on things you're referencing to. So we really need to be specific and name every single item that you're talking about. The next one, avoid superfluous infinitives, be able to, be capable of. This opens your requirement up into misinterpretation, because if you just state the item shall blank, that means it must do that continuously and constantly. If you put the item shall be able to, that opens it up to, well, can it fail multiple times? Can it only do it 1 out of 10 times? We aren't aware of what you mean by be able to. So if you want, so these terms should be taken out of your requirements. The next 3 are avoid the use of pronouns and indefinite pronouns. These become issues because we don't know what you're talking about if you use they, it, them. You should use the correct noun over and over again so that you know that they know what you are talking about. If you're talking about the pay station, you should use the pay station, because what if we think that you're talking about, say, the ticketing machines that the officers use. We don't know which system you're talking about. So if you use the proper noun over again, there's no risk of miscommunication. The next rule is provide measurable performance targets. These are important so that you can make it testable, and again, there's not miscommunication between what you mean. Somebody's version of fast might be different than somebody else's version of fast. The minimum for you might be different in another organization or from another project. So we really need specific targets so that we know exactly what to make and exactly what parameters we're looking at. Avoid using non-specific temporal words. These are very similar to the measurable performance targets. Eventually, earliest, latest, instantaneous. Does instantaneous mean within 1 second or within 30? We don't know. QB Scribe will check for anything like prompt, fast, instantaneous, things like that in their VAGs list, so you are aware of these uses and you can make the parameters more specific. So again, we'll go into the universal quantifier, or sorry, the issues drop down, click on VAG words, and we'll just go through a couple here. So in this case, it contains a VAG word. QB Scribe brings it up as represent. So the externally facing solution web portals and pages shall be branded to represent the municipality. Well, does that mean you want one tiny logo in the corner, like by the ground, or does that mean you want the whole box to be branded to the organization? What colors do you want used? That's not very specific. So the word represent here does not make things very clear. This one, there's multiple words within here, but this is a good example of must be able to separate HST from service fees on client-facing receipts. Well, do you want it sometimes to be able to split those up, or do you want this always split on every receipt? If you want it always split, be able to should be eliminated from this sentence. And one last one here. This is an example of the not limited to, and also there's the use of all within here. So they said including but not limited to the ability to report on HST collected, but then stated all of these items. You could just remove this and state all of these items, and then it's all stated there clear for what needs to be done. The next item is VAG symbols. So QB Scribe does not specifically analyze your document for these symbols, but they can be added to the continuances tab and then removed from your analysis later to ensure that these are used properly. So avoid the use of the oblique symbol unless you're doing rates, as well as avoid parentheses and brackets containing text. This is because it's usually explanatory knowledge and it should be added to a rationale or a comment section, not included within the requirement. So the next item is directives analysis. Refer to diagrams and tables when expressing complex requirements. These would be examples, tables, figures, diagrams, and things like that. They can be excluded after you give it a quick run through to ensure that the proper table numbers, it's a proper table, or the proper wording is used, and the directive is proper also. So it's just like continuances. Go into the configurations. There's directives over here, and you can add and remove these. You can also exclude them from the analysis. So right now I have it excluded from the analysis because it made a lot of noise within the document, but that's why we can exclude them. So the next analysis is passive voice analysis. This addresses Rule 2. Use active voice with the actor clearly identified. The actor must be identified, otherwise the requirement could be misinterpreted. Who is this action supposed to be for? What system is supposed to be doing this? It must be clearly identified so that there's no misinterpretation between what is doing what. Also, the phrase shall be indicates passive voice is present. So let's drill down here again, passive voice. And we will click on this guy here. So passive voice, like the universal quantifier, is just a quality warning. Again, warning you something is up here, maybe take a look at it. So here the term shall be is used, which indicates passive voice. This should be rewrote so that you can use active voice. So the next 3 items are going to be imperatives analysis. So first is the negative imperatives analysis. Rule 17, avoid the use of not. This can lead to problems in verification because, as INCOSE states, not implies not ever, which is impossible to verify within a finite time. There's also just the imperatives analysis. So this addresses Rule 19. Use a single sentence. Avoid compound in multiple sentences. If more than one imperative is present, generally it's more than one requirement. Also, if there's more than one sentence, this usually implicates the presence of a rationale, motivation, comment, some other addressing thing within the requirement. And speaking of rationale and motivation, there's also an exclusion prefix config, which can exclude rationale from the requirement statement, which is Rule 22. Phrases like in order to, so that, or thus allowing often indicate the requirement has a rationale within it. So again, if you go into the configs, exclusion prefixes, these are just the stock words. There wasn't any rationales or comments within this document, so I didn't need to remove them, but you can easily just tab them over and choose to remove them. That way you're not analyzing something, that's just an explanation, and it's not making lots of noise within your analysis. So if we go into imperatives, so we'll do negative imperatives first, and we'll dive right into this first one here. So it has negative imperatives. Here, the use of shall not. You should be focusing on what the system can do, what it can't do. So this should be reworded to be more positive. Again, multiple imperatives. So this one, let's pick a different one. This one here has, there we go, has 2 imperatives, which means if you give it a quick read, there are 2 requirements there. So they need to be split up so that it's a more clear, concise document. We also have a no imperatives check, which is alarming because that means there's no directive. There's nothing instructing you what to do there. So this guy has no imperatives, and it's just a description. So this isn't regarding what the system should or should not do. So this should be in a different part of the document, giving more of a description to the person that's doing the work. So the next item is unit consistency analysis. Rule 6, use the appropriate units when stating quantities. Improper or inconsistent use of units can lead to requirement incompatibility and ambiguity. You want to make sure that you're using the proper system of units as well as the proper units, so that nothing is getting mismeasured or misrepresented within the product. There's also term consistency analysis, which addresses 4 separate rules. So define terms, use terms consistently throughout requirement sets, define acronyms and use them consistently, and avoid using abbreviations in requirement sets. Abbreviations can cause some misinterpretation, miscommunication, because different organizations or different teams even might use different abbreviations for different things. So OP might mean operation in one world, and OP might mean operator in another. So if there's commonly used abbreviations within the project or the organization, you can easily add those to the vague terms list. That way you're alerted to them and you can fix them right away. So we'll tab over to the consistency tab, start off with units. This document doesn't have very many units, so it's easy to see what units are listed here. You can also drill down into each unit. So here it's minute. You can see it's highlighted over here. You can read through your requirement, say, yep, I actually meant 60 minutes, and make sure it's correct. Another way that you can go through is to filter it by the system of units. So if you want your entire document an international system of units, which is metric, click on that, take a look at them. You can go through them here also and be like, yep, those look right. But then there's also inconsistent with the international system of units, which would bring up anything that's imperial. Oh, why is something in Fahrenheit? Click it, take a look. Oh, okay, it's in both. It's converted correctly. Okay, I'll leave that. But then there's inch. It takes you directly to where it is, and you can see here there's no conversion and it's just stated in inches. So this could easily be confused for something like centimeter or meter. What do they mean? Everything else is in metric, and then there's this imperial form in here. So you can easily go through and switch this to centimeter or meter and convert it properly instead of somebody else guessing on the other end. The next item here is the terms. So here it's, we take all the terms from your document and list them for you here. You can toggle the matching strength over here to change the number of similar. So you can go from 100% anywhere to 50%. This is good for catching anything like your abbreviations, or if you're wording something a little improperly. So if we go into about 80% here, you can sort it by the number of similar. So here there's a mobile payment app and there's 3 similar. So right there, app is usually a abbreviation for application. So you should change that to application like it is here. There's also users. So you can check to make sure that there's not another form of user within that. So the next item is similarity analysis. Express each requirement once and only once. Redundant or contradictory requirements can cause confusion and incompatibilities. If you have a requirement that says everything that another one does, except for the measurements are different or the units are different, that can cause some confusion. So QB Scribe will check for anything that's similar. That means that you can toggle the strength. I'll show you in here. So similarity. You can toggle the strength anywhere from 50 to 100%. If it's 100%, that means everything is exactly the same. So generally there's nothing at this 100. But if we toggle it down to about 80, you can see here there's many requirements that are similar, because over here it states the number of similar requirements. This tool will easily bring it side by side. So if you click on the original requirement, pops up here, click on something below, it also highlights that. You can give these a read and see how similar they are, and if they're exactly the same or very similar, you can adapt them so that you only have one requirement. If you read through this one here, it's actually the exact same thing. So you could just remove one of this from your document and make it a more concise document. If you go down here, well, let's go down to one that's more like 81%. Here you can see that there's a few added words or a different system also. So it's similar, but it's not exactly the same. So you can leave that one. So there's other rules that are automated by other tools like Microsoft Word or your Microsoft systems. This is use correct grammar, spelling, and punctuation. So there are automations coming soon to QB Scribe. There's Rule 44, conform to structure and patterns. Implementation of ears. So ears is the easy approach to requirement syntax. It gives you a guideline of how to write what requirements to make it more clear and concise. There's also defined terms. So you'll see that this was in the automations earlier, but we are making an exportable list for the glossary. This way you can export all your terms and either make the glossary from that exportable list or compare that exportable list to your current glossary to make sure that you're not missing anything. There will also be new quality indicators and increased definition to the INCOSE guidelines. This will be added to the vague words analysis. It'll break it up a bit more and add new quality indicators to that. So just one more item I wanted to show you on QB Scribe. It's the last item is the report, generate report, I guess. This allows you to completely configure your own report. You can name it. You can choose what is in this report. So if you only want to give someone the ones and twos to look at, you may give them to that. There's also different items that you can remove from your report also. So if I click create here, so the report, it will have the name, the date. That way you can have a paper trail as to what improvements you're making along the way. And this is the first page. Many of our users like this first page because it shows them exactly where they're going wrong. It shows you how many requirements are within each quality score, as well as how many are within or have the issues within the quality breakdown. So in vague words, which is a very popular one to be your biggest culprit, it's in 43% of your requirements and it occurs 121 times. This means there's quite a bit of ambiguity and vagueness within your document. After this first page, there's just all your requirements listed and color-coded with a guide beside it to show you what is going on with that requirement, where your issues are, and what you need to fix. It also has the terms listed below here and the number of similar requirements beside. So you guys know the importance of finding the issues within your documents early. It is the cheapest as well as the most time saving if you find it in the requirements definition process instead of, say, the qualification and test or the in-service support. It's very difficult as well as time and costly to your organization. So one customer we had that found QB Scribe to be very useful to their team is the Royal Canadian Air Force. they reduced their requirements review time by over 50%. Usually in between 50 to 75% of time was saved by using QV Scribe. It increased their clarity, their testability, and their traceability. They also, while they were going through their documents, they had to rate QV Scribe on its speed of analysis, its clarity of the analysis, as well as the ease of corrections. They rated us 100% satisfied in all 3 of these items. This is because it allowed them to realize that maybe they weren't, their system for writing requirements wasn't the best system that they could have. So they had to go through and rework some of the requirements for them to meet the best practices of INCOSE as well as other guides. This also made the requirements, like I said before, more clear, testable, and traceable. So these are some of our featured clients. It's not only small companies that are just learning to write requirements that use our product. There's some big companies in here like Lockheed Martin, Honeywell, Ultra Electronics, Shell. They're big companies that have been writing requirements for years that still like our product and save time and money by using this product to write their requirements. So I want to thank you all for being here today. I hope you found the content useful. I'll take any questions that you may have now.
Okay, so I have one question here related to the quality indicator screen.
Okay.
So that first pane there, the first tab, and they're wondering if you could just go back and look at all the different quality indicators that are offered at this time.
Okay.
And you mentioned before that there were others coming, and they were wondering what those were again.
Okay. Just wants to glitch on me here. So the quality indicators that we have right now, they're the vague words, the imperatives. Here we go. Okay, so here's your list here. There's the excessive continuances, which are your combinators, your ands, both, all, things like that. There's the directives, which are what's sending you to your tables, your figures, and your explanations. There's the multiple imperatives. So there's 3 imperative checks: multiple imperatives, no imperatives, and negative imperatives. This is your shalls, your musts, which are your imperatives, or your shall nots, which are the negative imperatives. There's all optional words, vague words, universal quantifiers, incomplete sentences, and passive voice. So these last 3 are your quality warnings, which are the triangles here. So maybe we can find a good one with lots. So this one is a good example of multiple imperatives highlighted in the green, and then it also has a universal quantifier of any. There's a few going on here. So here's your continuances highlighted in the purple, and your vague words, not limited to, and then shall and will is your multiple imperatives going on there. Was that clear enough?
Yeah, I have one more question.
Okay.
Tom asks, can your product generate a functional specification to a custom format? So this is like the ear structure. Okay,
so right now we do not have that. That is coming next. So with the implication, or addition of the ears format, let's go back here. So the implementation of ears, which is the easy approach to requirement syntax. There are functional requirement guidelines within that, and with our next addition to QE Scribe, it will alert you to if it's not following the ears guides.
Okay, and Yusef asks, can we have a summary for this tutorial?
Yes, definitely. There is a recording, and we will send that out to all of you. There is also a written guide that will go through all the steps of QB Scribe, with also beside the rules. So if that's of interest to you, just let myself know at rebecca.labby@qracorp.com, or let anybody at our organization know, and we can get you a copy of that written guide also.
Okay, and Arjun says, does QB Scribe count commas as a logical, basically conjunction such as and or?
Right now it doesn't, but you can easily add it to your continuances if you want. So you can go into your configs, go into continuances, and say we want to add the comma, sorry. You're gonna add the comma, and that way it will alert you to the commas in the continuances section, and you can ensure that all of those commas need to be there. And then after you've reviewed your whole document to see if your continuances are correct, you can exclude it from the analysis, meaning that it won't show up in your quality indicators over here.
Okay, and Matt's asking, do you offer a free trial, or in other words, how would you test the analysis on their own document?
So right now, we prefer for you guys to send us a document, and we will run it through QB Scribe for you. And then we will come back and do another web chat with you and show you examples of the issues within the document, your report, as well as we'll take the time to do a 20-minute improvement of your document and show you the difference that it will make.
And then Arjun asks, does the document have to be in a table format?
No, it doesn't need to be in a table format. So as long as there some sort of an indicator indicating a requirement is present, we will catch that. So it doesn't need to be in a table. It can just be written text, but it can also be in Excel too. If you use Excel, there is QB Scribe for Excel also. We'll just give it a couple more minutes for anybody that has any final questions. We're good to go? Okay.
Oh, one more.
Oh.
Can you directly connect to Doors Next Generation?
No, unfortunately right now we don't directly connect to Doors. There is a CSV format that we can use to run QB Scribe on, and that is what our current customers do. But there is a, oh yes, here, export requirements. So this works for Doors. So you can click on here and it will export it into something that will go into Doors. But we do not directly go into Doors at the moment. That is something that we are working on for future iterations though.
And Gregorio just asked if there's any Polarian ALM connector or links.
No, there isn't at this time, but there is potential for that in the future.
Ricardo is asking, very useful software. Can it be customized to other languages such as Portuguese or Spanish?
No, not this time. It's only in English for now.
And then Tom asks, how does your product handle changes to a requirement? So audit trails or before or after text?
So if you want to edit your requirement while you're going through, you can easily, let's just pick one here. Where's an easy one to just, so if you want to get rid of the vague words, easily just remove the vague word, and you can save it and reanalyze it later, or you can reanalyze the selected right now, and it will come up as all green. So there's no longer anything wrong within this. The report is also a good indicator of what improvements you made on what date. So if you generate the report before you do any improvements, print that off, and then you can generate a report after your improvements. It will give you the dates and times of those changes.
Okay, and Chris asks, have you tested it on semiconductor complex designs?
So we have been working with Intel. So we've been using it on their semiconductors, and we also have a few other customers that have been in that space that are interested. So we have worked with customers like that before. Let's give a couple more minutes here in case anybody else has a question. Awesome. Well, thanks guys for coming today. And like I said, if you had to drop off at any time or you needed to dive out and you missed something, just let me know and you'll get a recording, as well as if you're interested in the written document, we will send those to you too if you request them. So thanks for coming. I hope you enjoyed the content and enjoy the rest of your day.